Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific. My name is Jenny Dean. I'm the Vice President of Education and Conservation here at the Aquarium, and excited tonight to present our first Wednesday lecture series. Many of you are here in the room, but we also have an online audience tonight. And so if your friends aren't here in the room and you want to make sure they catch a repeat of tonight's discussion, we host it on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out through the Aquarium's website. Tonight, we're here to talk about recycled water here in Southern California, so hopefully deepen some of your knowledge about our water system and the reuses that we're having for that water after you use it in your homes or workplaces. We're here tonight in part because of some generous sponsors who you can see up on our screen. That includes Stephen and Brenda Olson, the Osborne and Rourke Charitable Trust, Courtyard by Marriott's Long Beach Downtown Hotel, and the San Gabriel and Lower Los Angeles Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. So we're really pleased that they have chosen to partner with the Aquarium and provide this wonderful educational series to you. Today's evening is a panel. We, instead of having a single speaker, have the pleasure of hosting 3 different speakers to give you really in-the-weeds information about the water system here in Long Beach in particular. I'm going to introduce each of these speakers at the beginning, and then they're going to come up in sequence after that. So sort of retain some of this biographical information in your mind that give you context about the speakers, and then they'll come up one at a time. As you'll recall, our format is to do some presentations here up at the podium. We'll do about 20 minutes of presentations or so. Then we'll do a question and answer period where I'll introduce some questions to our panelists, and you'll get the opportunity to ask some questions. And then we get to go and have a reception where you can continue the conversation, do some crafts, see some of our animals. So without further ado, let me give you a little introduction to the speakers that we have joining us tonight, starting with Monica Sanchez. Monica is a supervising engineer who leads the Los Angeles County Sanitation District's reuse group. This is a group that oversees the agency's recycled water program, which includes the production of 150 million gallons per day of recycled water at 10 water reclamation plants, and that gets used at over 900 reuse sites across the area. She has 22 years of experience with agencies working on recycled water treatment and operations, regulatory development and compliance, demand management, and project development. She's an engineer, as are our other 2 speakers as well, which is really exciting. I know we have some students in the audience that might be pursuing that profession. And she has degrees from California State Polytechnic University, Pomona, and the University of California, Berkeley. Our second speaker who will come up is Tai Tseng. He's an assistant general manager of the Long Beach Utilities Department. In this role, he is responsible for maintaining not only the drinking water and the recycled water that we have here in Long Beach, which is what we're talking all about today, but also ensuring the reliable delivery of natural gas and making sure that there are environmentally responsible collection of sewage occurring in the city. He's making sure that both you stay safe and that we're stewarding environmental resources. He has 30 years working in this industry, working both for the public and private sectors, and he has 2 different degrees in engineering. He's also got some certifications held by the state of California that are pretty impressive that I encourage you to ask him about after the conversation. Our third and final speaker is also from the Long Beach Utilities Department, and that's Heather Ree. Heather's also an engineer, yay engineering, and an engineering manager more specifically. This is a role where she oversees the contracts that the department is developing, thinks about the long-term evolution of the facilities, and leads the development of the 10-year capital improvement plan, which allows them to look long into the future about their operations. She has 15 years of experience working with utilities and has specialized in water and wastewater infrastructure and design. She also has some young children who are joining us tonight online, similar to the children perhaps that are up in front here. So we do encourage you to bring your young learners, especially to the online experience. So hello to Heather's kids. Now I'm going to turn it over to them because I don't know enough about water to tell you about it, and instead they will present. As they do so, please be respectful. So everyone turn down the volume on your cell phones or silence them is even better, and we'll turn it over to Monica to begin. Thank you, Monica.
Welcome. Since I'm starting off the night, I'd like to set the stage for our discussion today. First, let's talk about recycled water. What is recycled water? Recycled water comes from the wastewater that goes down the drains in our bathrooms, our kitchens, and our laundry rooms, in both our homes and businesses. This wastewater is then sent to treatment plants. And at these treatment plants, the water is cleaned so that contaminants and solids are removed, making it nearly indistinguishable from drinking water. This cleaned water is called recycled water and can be used for a variety of different purposes. However, recycled water has different names depending on the level of treatment. The most commonly used recycled water is called tertiary treated recycled water. And tertiary means 3, and it stands for the 3 different treatment processes that the water goes through before it's reused. And it's also more commonly referred to as purple pipe water, which you'll hear more about later today. However, more recently, purified water has become more and more popular. Purified water is recycled water that goes through additional advanced treatment processes. And it is so clean that minerals actually have to be added back before the water can be reused. This water can be reused for a variety of different purposes. This reuse is all regulated by the state, and it is categorized as either non-potable reuse or potable reuse. Non-potable reuse refers to recycled water that is used for purposes where the drinking water supply is not intentionally being supplemented with recycled water. This includes uses such as landscape irrigation, agricultural irrigation, and a variety of different type of industrial uses. These uses are commonly referred to as purple pipe uses. And as the name implies, the water is actually delivered through pipes that are purple. So if you're ever out and about and you see purple sprinkler heads, purple fire hydrants, purple signs, purple pipes, then you know that that site is using recycled water. Potable reuse, on the other hand, refers to uses where the drinking water supply is intentionally supplemented with recycled water. This can be done either indirectly or directly. Indirect potable reuse, with indirect potable reuse, the recycled water, both tertiary and purified water, spends time in an environmental buffer. These environmental buffers may include both either groundwater aquifers, where the recycled water is sent to spreading basins where it can percolate and then enter into the groundwater supply, or it can be injected directly into the groundwater supply. Additionally, surface water reservoirs can be an environmental buffer. Here, the recycled water is used to supplement the drinking water reservoirs. These environmental buffers allow for an additional layer of natural treatment. Direct potable reuse, on the other hand, removes these environmental buffers. The water is instead directly put into our drinking water system. Another distinguishing factor of direct potable reuse is that only purified water can be used for this. And this ensures that it's the highest quality of water for this use. And actually, the state only recently approved regulations for direct potable reuse. So there are no projects that are currently doing direct potable reuse in California, but there are many agencies that are looking into this. But why is the recycled water so important? Well, this is because it's a reliable, safe, high quality, and plentiful source. With recycled water, we're able to enjoy the lush landscapes that we've grown to love here in Southern California, instead of having the desert that Southern California is really intended to be. And like we like to say at our agency, water is too precious just to use once. And as many of you have likely heard, all water is recycled water, essentially. The earth is making no new water. Mother Nature has her own natural processes that clean the water before it gets to us. And the treatment that the wastewater goes through at our wastewater treatment facilities actually just mimics what Mother Nature does, but on a much faster pace. And if you guys like this picture, we actually have some brochures outside that have a nice coloring of it, and you can color it yourself. So we at the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts have 11 of these wastewater treatment plants throughout the Los Angeles basin. And daily we treat approximately 400 million gallons of sewage. This is enough to fill the Rose Bowl about 5 times every single day. And of this amount, approximately 85 million gallons is beneficially reused throughout our service area for the uses that I described earlier. 65 million gallons is recycled, but not beneficially reused. And approximately 250 million gallons is treated, but not to tertiary levels, and is discharged to the ocean. This water is actually here at our A.K. Warren Water Resource Facility. And the sanitation districts and Metropolitan Water District of Southern California are working together right now to reuse this untapped source. The Pure Water Southern California project will purify 150 million gallons a day of this water that is currently being discharged to the ocean, and will put it to beneficial use throughout our region with potable reuse projects. The sanitation districts has a long history of recycled water. We have been producing recycled water since 1962. And since that time, over 1 trillion gallons has been beneficially reused. We currently have over 950 reuse sites throughout our service area, and are partnering with over 30 local cities and water agencies to reuse this water. Locally, we own and operate the Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant, which is located by the 605 freeway and the Willow Street exit. This plant has been in operation since 1973, and the recycled water produced at this plant is beneficially reused in this local area in the city of Long Beach. And this water is reused in partnership with the Long Beach Utilities Agency. Ty will now go into how this water is used locally.
Hi everybody, my name is Ty, and if you like my presentation, my name is Ty. If you don't like my presentation, my name is either Heather or Monica. So for me, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Long Beach uses its recycled water for. And to represent recycled water, I am wearing a purple shirt. I see most of you did not get the memo. I got the memo, and now I'm thinking it was just a cruel joke. But Monica is in support of that. Yeah, but we do put the recycled water into a purple pipe so that it's easily identified, so that you don't accidentally tap into it and drink from it, because it's actually not potable water. It is recycled water and has beneficial uses, and I'm going to tell you about what we use it for. Before I get into that, Monica mentioned that this is the Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant. It's right off the 605 freeway and Willow. And I'm always grateful for the foresight of our previous board and general managers. I think we have one here in the audience today. And they, in the 60s, traded this land to LA County Sanitation to build this plant. In exchange, all the recycled water produced from this plant belongs to the resident of Long Beach. So the Long Beach Utilities Department then tries to find beneficial reuse for all this water that we had the foresight to try to obtain back in the 60s. And so this is the map of Long Beach and our major recycled water pipeline infrastructure. The Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant is over here on the east side of the city, and then we deliver it to major property, major users across the city, golf courses, parks, and one of our biggest users is Thumbs Island. So some of you have seen Thumbs Island when you drive along Ocean. That's that weird island that when I first moved to Southern California, I was like, hey, how do I buy a house on that island? But it's not a house. It's actually an oil drilling operation. And so when they drill oil out of the Wilmington oil field, it's actually around only 3% oil and 97% water. They extract the oil from it, but they need to put the water back into the ground so that there's no subsidence. And so they need to make up that 3% plus a little extra so that they can fully recharge that void that they extracted the oil from. And so instead of using potable water, what they ask to do is they take recycled water and blend it with the oil extracted water and then put it back in the ground. And so then that is a great beneficial use of the recycled water. Another beneficial use of recycled water is we want to make sure that we have beautiful lawns at our cemeteries. And then another beneficial reuse of our recycled water is to irrigate the golf courses. We want to make sure that everyone that enjoys golf has pretty fairways and especially the putting greens. But we want to make sure that we do it environmentally correctly. And so we offered up recycled water to our golf courses in our city, and they all taken that. And so that has really helped reduce our potable water demand while keeping our golf courses green. One of the newer recycled water uses is the duck pond. And this is located off of Studebaker by Willow. And so when the city rebuilt the duck pond, Long Beach Utilities Department worked out a deal with the city where we would start to fill the duck pond with recycled water. And the reason why we want to do that is because recycled water availability does not match up with water usage in terms of time. And so usually recycled water becomes available about 3 hours after people start using the facility. So when you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, making breakfast, taking your morning showers, 3 hours later, there's recycled water. And then at night, when you go home, again, you're doing laundry, washing dishes, taking showers, and then 3 hours after that, there's recycled water. But because recycled water is not potable, the rule says that we cannot use it before 10 p.m. So we can only use it between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., but that's not when recycled water is available. So we have to create storage. And one of the neat ways for us to create storage then is to use this pond so that during the day when recycled water is available, we can pump recycled water into the pond, and at night when the adjacent golf course, the Eldorado golf course, it'll be actually on this side, when the Eldorado golf course needs the water, they can pump out of the pond and irrigate the golf course. And so at the same time, it's kind of a win-win because by recycling the water out of the duck pond, it will kind of keep the water more fresh, and so it doesn't get as foul. No pun intended, or maybe pun intended. At the same time, the ducks do help provide additional nutrients to irrigate the golf course. So a couple of other major projects to highlight that I don't have cool pictures for is we do have one dual pond building, and what that is we have a facility that not only uses recycled water for irrigation on the outside, they elected to use recycled water for flushing toilets, right? So when they built the facility, when they built the building, they had to run a whole separate set of pipeline just so that they can flush bathrooms with it, right? And so there's very strict rules about doing that, but this company really felt that it was their duty to make sure that they are environmental stewards, and they put in a dual pond system in their facility. And this is over in Douglas Park. And then we have a project that we're actually working on with LADWP at the Haynes Power Generation Plant. So these coastal power plants traditionally use once-through cooling to cool their systems, right? So they would bring in ocean water, run it through, and it would cool off, and then dump it into the San Gabriel River in this case, and then San Gabriel River is pretty warm. But because of impingement and entrainment, EPA changed the Clean Water Act. And then it specifically changed Rule 316B, which says that coastal power plants must reduce their once-through cooling or impingement and entrainment by 95%. That essentially eliminated once-through cooling for coastal power plants. So coastal power plants now have to go to air cooling. But air cooling still uses water. And so instead of using potable water, we're working out a partnership with LADWP so that we deliver recycled water to the power plant. And that way, they're not using potable water, you're using recycled water, and then it will actually get returned back to the Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant, and it creates kind of a loop for us to help us have that sustainable operation. Now, lastly, one of the uses I want to really kind of point to is advanced reuse water. So the water that Monica was alluding to, that's recycled water that's been heavily treated. But before I talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about how groundwater travels in our region. So up here by the San Gabriel Mountains, or the foothills of San Gabriel Mountains, we have our natural spreading grounds, or natural recharge area. And then water travels through these underground aquifers towards the ocean, right? And so water travels down, and so as you can see, many cities will start to extract water. It's kind of curved, but if you look at the elevation here, it's higher than the surface elevation here, right? Like so, well, fun fact, so like the city of Artesia, as water enters here, it's under pressure in this aquifer, and so when the city of Artesia drills a well, this pressure will push water out, and you have an artesian well. So this is why the cities are called like Artesia. And in Orange County is Fountain Valley, because in the early days, there was a lot of these groundwater just popping out of the ground like artesian wells. So anyways, as water travels down towards the coast, right, you come across the ocean. Now there lies a problem. The ocean is going to want to push salt water towards the groundwater aquifer. And so this salt water can actually contaminate the drinking water aquifer as Long Beach starts to extract this groundwater, right? And so the way to prevent the seawater from coming into the groundwater aquifer is to create a mound of water by injecting water down this pipe and create a mound of water, and that will push the water back and prevent the seawater from intruding into the groundwater aquifer. Now, historically, that is done with potable water, but that's not really the best use of potable water. And so what we want to do is we want to take recycled water and supertreat it so that we can use that supertreated recycled water, what I like to call astronaut water, right? Because astronauts don't get to bring water up to space, so they have to reuse that water. And then they inject this astronaut water back into the groundwater aquifer to create that mound. So that's why it looks a little purple. And so here on the map, this is the barrier that there's a bunch of wells that LA County Public Works operates. They get water from Long Beach as well as from the Water Replenishment District, and they create this little barrier to prevent seawater from coming in. There's actually two other barriers. There's one over here, it's called the Dominguez Gap Barrier, and there's one on the West Coast Basin. There's another barrier there. I want to talk a little bit about this astronaut water. The facility that we get the astronaut water from is the Leo J. Vanderland's Advanced Treatment Water Facility. This is located right next to the Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant, and it's owned and operated by the Water Replenishment District of Southern California. And so this is where we take tertiary treated recycled water, so the purple pipe water, and we convert it into advanced recycled water or reuse water. And the way we do it is we take the purple pipe water and we run it through microfiltration to remove the particles. The cutoffs for these membranes, the pore size is roughly 0.5 to 0.5 micrometers, right? So to give you a little bit of a reference, your hair is roughly 70 micrometers. Okay, so that's how small these pores are for these microfilters. So they're designed to remove most of the particles out of the water. After that, they'll take the water and they'll run it through reverse osmosis. The reverse osmosis membranes starts to remove salts, dissolved particles in the water. Right, so this is where we're removing like calcium and magnesium and a whole bunch of other salts. And this is kind of what Monica was saying too. Once we remove the salt from the water actually gets a little too pure. And so if you actually look at the bottle, like say on the bottle of Dasani, the Dasani water is going through a membrane treatment. And they stripped out so much minerals that it's very flat. So what they have to do is they have to remineralize. Right? And so if you read the bottle label, they'll tell you that it's been remineralized, purified water. Right? So what they're doing is they're stripping everything out and then putting minerals back into the water. And so we do that with the recycled water after MF treatment. And then after that, we want to blast it with some kind of disinfection. Right? And so this is what we call a multi-barrier approach. Here we have a physical barrier. Here we have a chemical barrier. In this case, it's UV with peroxide, and they make what they call hydroxy radicals. And those are these are compounds that are electron scavengers. So they really start to attack like compounds that are really hard to break down, like 1,4-dioxane. And so we use the advanced oxidation process to really blast the water to remove any kind of remaining contaminants that's left in the water. And these processes put together provides the safe drinking water that when we start talking about toilet to tap, it is these science processes that makes the water kind of safe, right? For indirect potable reuse, just so you know, the requirements is what they call 12-10-10, meaning that for viruses, we have to remove 12 logs of viruses. So 12 logs, each log is a 9, so that means that is 99.999999999%, right? For indirect potable reuse. And so for that many viruses, only one can get through, right? And so when we get into direct potable use, it's like 20 logs. So I'm not going to take off my socks to count on my toes, but that's a lot of 9s, right? And so the regulation is set up to make sure that the toilet to tap water, or the astronaut water, let's call it astronaut water, is safe to drink. Now, one neat thing, I didn't bring it today, I should have brought it, show and tell. The Water Reuse Organization, a few years back, did a homebrew contest. And they challenged a bunch of really geeky engineers who like to drink beer, right, to take recycled water and make homebrew with it. And so I had a couple of friends from a consulting firm that came out to the LVL plant, took a lot of this water, and they brewed some homebrew out of it. And I wish I would have brought that with me so I can show you what advanced treated recycled water homebrew looks like. It looks just like regular beer. They call it IPA. I think they call it indirect potable ale, right? So that's what they called it. So with that, Long Beach is thinking about how it plays in the world of indirect potable reuse and direct potable reuse. And again, what really defines whether or not it's indirect potable reuse or direct potable reuse is natural attenuation time. So let's face it, right? So the amount of water molecules we had on this earth 4.5 billion years ago is the same amount of molecules we have on earth today. So the water you drink today, somewhere along the line, may have gone through a dinosaur kidney, right? And so we are in de facto reuse, but there is natural attenuation time, right? And so when we shorten the natural attenuation time between when the water is injected and where we extract it, if that's in between 2 years and 6 months, that's what we call indirect potable reuse. If the natural attenuation time is less than 6 months, that's what we call direct potable reuse. And within direct potable reuse, there's a whole bunch of categories, because when you get into direct potable reuse, the risk starts to really go up. And so there's a lot of restrictions, and there's a lot of rules, a lot of technology that we have to apply to make sure that water is safe. But the state convened a blue ribbon panel to tell us what we need to do to make sure it's safe to drink. So there are now rules that we can follow to make sure that the water is safe to drink when we start talking about this astronaut water. And so Long Beach is engaged in some of that. And so I'm going to pass it along to Heather to talk about what the future holds for Long Beach.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Let's see how I work this. So Monica and Ty did a really great job providing an overview of how recycled water supplies are generated and how Long Beach currently uses it today. So where do we go from here? And that's where I fill in that picture. And the plan is really simple. The plan is we're going to continue using more of it by expanding its applications. And before I get into those details, I wanted to provide you some context that I think is really important for you to know. So the image that you see behind me is actually one of our favorites that we like to use here at the Utilities Department, and I've used it frequently in my previous other presentations. And what it shows is Long Beach's overall water use reported in total acre feet. And it also shows the percent breakdowns as well as the 3 different color categories, where this color on the left represents local groundwater that we pump. This color in the middle represents import water purchases that we make. So this water comes from areas like the Colorado River and the State Water Project. And then this color over here on the very right represents recycled water coming out from the Long Beach Water Reclamation Plant. Now, the averages that you see reported are for our past, today, and future water use that we project out. Now, the 2 major takeaways that I ask you to carry on with you are tied to, first, the overall decreasing water use. Here in Long Beach, we just don't use as much water as we used to, and we anticipate that trend to continue on. And then the second takeaway is tied to the makeup behind the breakdowns. So if you can draw your attention to the today averages here in the middle, you'll notice that we do a much better job using local groundwater supplies to fulfill our needs relative to import water purchases that we make. So when you look in the past, that relationship was reversed. So we're doing a much better, fantastic job at using our local supplies today. So going on in the future, we actually plan to skew this relationship even further in favor of local groundwater supplies. And we plan to achieve that by leveraging recycled water into that mix. So Long Beach and groundwater is no stranger to one another. We've actually been extracting groundwater from the basins for nearly 100 years, so we've gotten pretty good at it. The areas that we actually extract from is what we refer to as the Central and West Coast basins. Now, these basins actually cover a very large area of Southern California, but you can see how these groundwater basins look like within the city of Long Beach boundaries. So we're really fortunate to have access to 2 different groundwater basins. Now, when we extract water out of these resources, we actually have to follow a lot of rules, and for good reason, because it's important to note that we are not the only pumper that has access into these local resources. We are just one of many. And it's really important to follow the rules because we don't ever want to get into a situation where we overdraft or overpump from these groundwater basins, which has actually happened in the past. So, one of the major rules that we abide by in Long Beach, because there are so many, it's kind of like its own banking system, but one of the more simpler ones that we follow is tied to our allowable pumping allocation. Basically, it's what we refer to as our water rights, and it points to how much water we can actually extract from the ground in any given year. So that number in Long Beach is 32,692.7 acre foot per year. So you guys don't have to worry, I'm not planning on quizzing you, but I just want to let you know that that number is going to pop up again in my presentation. So you can see here that here's what a typical well looks like for us. It's basically just some pipes and pumps sticking out from under the ground. So next time you're in a park or in an open space and you see something like this kind of sticking up, that's probably what it is, a groundwater well. So I mentioned that we plan on using and leveraging recycled water supplies when it comes to groundwater production. So where is the purple in the map, right? Like, how are we going to do that? Now, when it comes to the infrastructure, it's relatively straightforward. The technology exists. But basically what that looks like is you identify an advanced treated recycled water source. You build a pipe from that source to an injection well that would then insert that water, push it down into the groundwater aquifers, where it essentially replenishes the basin and replenishes the groundwater levels in that area. Then separately, what happens is we have extraction wells. So we are able to recover that recycled water, but it's no longer in the form of recycled water. It's now in the form of groundwater supplies. And then it goes on its conventional way where we take it to a centralized treatment plant for further treatment and processing, and then we end up conveying it up to a storage tank or directly to homes and businesses for consumption. So I basically described just like really broad infrastructure, and the physical infrastructure is what allows us to move the different types of water around. But it's really important to note that that infrastructure doesn't happen without previous partnerships or agreements that happen between people and organizations, which is probably just equally as important. So what does that look like on paper, right? Technically, the concept would be whatever we are able to inject into the ground, we would then be able to extract out. So remember that 32,692.7 acre foot number that we are currently limited to. We can technically increase that. So it allows us to gain more access to readily available groundwater supplies, and it brings us to a more drought-resilient future because it's a more sustainable way of pumping out groundwater. So let's see. Now, we basically understand like what direction we want to head into and what type of infrastructure that we want to build. So we're filling in the details now. We currently have a study going on, kicked off earlier this year, and we call it our groundwater augmentation study. And basically what this study does is three major things. First, it's gonna, we're taking a look at the central and west coast basins to evaluate areas within the groundwater basins that will actually accept water for injection. We're doing that in partnership with the Water Replenishment District, and we're utilizing a groundwater model to help us evaluate that. The second major component of the study looks at our existing infrastructure. So remember, we are no strangers to groundwater production. We have infrastructure that is already there. So there's a whole bunch of pipes and pumps that we need to look at, because if the intent is to increase production capacities, we need to make sure that our infrastructure is going to be able to handle that. So part of that evaluation requires a condition assessment of our existing pipelines and assets. It also requires use of a hydraulic model. So we're updating and calibrating the hydraulic model so that we're able to develop various like what-if scenarios. And these what-if scenarios eventually help us identify any capital improvement projects. So let's say there's a pipe somewhere within our system that hydraulically cannot fit any more groundwater flowing through it. Well, we would identify that pipeline segment for a potential improvement project where we would either upsize that pipeline or we would design and construct an additional pipeline for redundancy and increase our capacity to take on the additional flows. And then finally, to cap off the study, we plan on actually siting these injection wells and any potential extraction wells if needed. So that basically covers the entire augmentation study. And this type of a study is really exciting for the Utilities Department because it's planning for a very large community. And I love this stuff because it basically brings like your future state scenarios, however many you want to come up with, and it brings those scenarios into your present day. So then folks like us, we can do something about it today. We can have these types of engagement opportunities and come up with some actionable items so that we can continue trying to achieve, those goals and shared objectives. So, yeah, with that, I don't really have anything else to say. I think this concludes it, and I guess this is the part that I invite Jenny, Ty, and Monica back up to finish out the rest of the program. Thank you.
Well, thanks again. That was really a wonderful introduction and comprehensive introduction to how our water system works here in Long Beach and Los Angeles more broadly. I'm going to ask a couple questions to get the panelists going, but in the audience, start thinking about which questions you have because we'll quickly turn to those. So my first question is around how does this compare to other parts of California or the United States? Is the model that you just described standard, or are we doing things that are particularly innovative? Maybe Monica, we could start with you.
Yeah, so what we're actually doing here in Los Angeles County and Long Beach is very similar to what's happening in the rest of the United States, but we've just been doing it longer. California is really at the forefront of recycled water production, recycled water use, recycled water regulations, and other states are actually look to California and look to Southern California, this Los Angeles area, for information and to see what projects we're doing and how we're doing it and lessons learned. So it's really in line with what's happening in the United States as a whole.
Great. What are some of the challenges that you guys are encountering in increasing the volume of recycled water? Volume or other components of the system, I suppose.
Well, okay, so maybe I'll take that one. So there's a couple of challenges. One is, I think we talk about conservation is a way of life, right? And so with conservation, there is actually less recycled water available. So we have to figure out how to better use our recycled water. That is a challenge that we're facing because recycled water, which used to be more plentiful, is now diminished because of our conservation efforts. The other thing is, this is a little bit different, but the whole idea of reuse and what, again, the astronaut water, right? We don't want to say totally the tap, we want to say astronaut water. We want to get past that ick factor because we need people to be educated to understand that there's no such thing as virgin water anymore. And so we are already in de facto reuse. And so now we just need to really understand that, hey, this is what's really happening. Technology exists. There are great people operating facilities that are required to treat water to a certain degree that meets regulatory standards and makes it safe, right? And so we're going to get past that ick factor and realize that that's where the future really is going to take us.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, I don't know if you remember from my slide, but we have a design capacity for all of our water reclamation facilities, and right now, most of them are treating less than what it's even designed for because of what Ty was saying. We're just getting less sewage into our treatment plants. And the water itself is actually being used at so many different sites. Like I mentioned, that facility has been recycling water since 1973, and Long Beach Utilities has been using that water since that time. So throughout that time, they've already converted, and other places, other cities, not like outside of Long Beach, have already converted a lot of their sites to where all the, low-hanging fruit is already using recycled water. So now it's like, okay, to get to other places, there's, like I mentioned, this water is delivered by purple pipes, so it's a completely separate distribution system. And so to deliver this water, new distribution systems, new purple pipes have to be constructed and installed to be able to do that. And that's difficult in metropolitan areas like ourselves, like what we have here, where there's already all kinds of utilities in the ground and hard to get those in.
And just to add on to both Ty and Monica's point, I guess some of the challenges that I see in the planning realm is the delicate balancing act of how do we get new infrastructure into our system while addressing aging infrastructure that we already have. So that's something that I wanted to add in.
Yeah. The last question that I'll ask, and then we'll have the volunteers going up and down the aisles for your questions, is how to stay informed. And I think, Heather, this is pretty relevant to yours. How can the public learn about the augmentation study and its results?
I guess my thoughts about that would be get involved with the community, come out to events like this. I think this is a perfect opportunity to come and meet the people who are directly involved with the recycled water world. I myself am directly involved with the study. Ty, Monica, they're directly involved with operations and being the supplier of the recycled water source. Just getting involved with the community. I guess for Long Beach Utilities specifically, reaching out, inquiring, staying engaged.
It's 555-5555. Area code 555.
And for the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, you can always go to our website, www.lacsd.org, and we have a ton of information there. Also, we do offer tours of our water reclamation facilities to the public. So if you go online to our website, you can see what the schedule's like and go for a tour and actually see firsthand how the water is recycled.
Yeah, and I would not do my public affairs team justice, but we are totally engaged in social media, so that's probably one of the easier ways to get a hold of us as well.
Great, thank you. Let's raise the house lights a little bit and get started with your questions. And apologies that my coughing and voice is wavering here. The Santa Ana winds really get to me. Do we have a first question?
What's the impact of this lots of rain in one year and then nothing for a couple of years? And how do you balance and capture that rainwater in the big years?
So storage is key in terms of our ability to sustain these fluctuations in the water cycle. And so what we can do is, in years of bountiful water, we try to find places to store water. Now, surface water reservoirs are actually pretty rare to build these days. So we have, Orville Dam and Shasta, and then the Colorado River. You have the Hoover, Lake Powell, Lake Mead, those reservoirs. But one of the future untapped areas is part of what Heather's talking about, is this augmentation concept, right? Where we can take water that we're not going to be able to drink, and we try to store it into the groundwater aquifer. And there is a lot more storage in the ground than there is available space for us to build surface water reservoirs. And now it's for us to figure out how do we do that and how do we do that safely. And that's part of the augmentation study, is figure out how do we then maximize this groundwater resource, this space down there, so that we can store water. One of the ways that we currently engage is what we call in-lieu conjunctive use. And so instead of pumping out groundwater, Metropolitan will ask us to buy surface water and leave the water in the ground. So in lieu, we are storing it in the ground and leaving it in the ground to have it down there so that when we need it in the dry years, it's available for us to pump out. And so those are ways for us to engage on how to store this water when it's available.
Additionally, I'd just like to add, the sanitation districts partner with the Water Replenishment District of Southern California, which was shown earlier, and we have the Montebello Forbury groundwater recharge basins, which are up in Pico Rivera, and they're these large, huge, unlined, like ponds, And during times of storms like we had this year and last year, the LA County Public Works diverts the stormwater that's in the river channel, the San Gabriel River Channel and Rio Hondo, into those spreading basins so that it can percolate and go into the groundwater supply. So at times where we do have heavy storms, then they try to take as much of that water, the rainwater and the storm flows, into the spreading grounds and recharge it so that it's there and it can mix with the other water in the groundwater aquifers.
Thank you very much to the three of you for a fascinating presentation, and thank you to the Aquarium for putting this on. This maybe isn't exactly about recycling water, but if we can take ick water and create astronaut water, is it possible, or what are the barriers to taking seawater, which is very abundant and right offshore, and creating astronaut water?
Okay, you want to take the first stab at it?
I'll
Go
take
ahead.
the first crack at this. So desalination is what you're referring to, and it's definitely an option for the Southern California region. It's still an option that the Utilities Department considers, yet compared to all the other alternatives that are available to us, it ranks lower. So the concept that you saw for like groundwater augmentation, it's less energy intensive compared to desalination, and it provides a whole bunch of other benefits when you're comparing the two different approaches. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add more onto that.
Yeah, so definitely some people have referred it as the Pacific Aqueduct, right? So we have this Pacific Ocean right off to the coast. I want to give you a little bit of context in terms of cost, though. When we buy water from Metropolitan Water District, who imports water from the Colorado River off of Lake Mead, or brings it down from Northern California at Orville, and then treats it and sells it to the Long Beach Utilities Department, we buy it for $1,200 an acre foot. Now compare that to this using recycled water and applying the treatment processes that I described earlier. To produce then the astronaut water is roughly around $2,000 a square acre foot. Now with seawater, it's basically the same process, but because the salinity content of seawater, we have to drive it at much, much higher pressures. And so because of that pressure requirement then really brings up the cost of producing the desal water. So now we're looking at in the magnitude of $35,000 to $4,000 an acre foot. And so that is a big cost difference. And right now, because we do have recycled water available, it is more an environmentally friendly and positive way to provide water resources than tapping into the ocean. At some point, we may do that because there is just only so much we may be able to do with recycling. But right now, we're not quite there yet, and we're trying to tackle some of the lower hanging fruit. The other aspect is the geolocation, right? So with desal, you have to be located on the coast. And then you have to try to figure out a way to push it inland and divide and serve it into other communities more inland. But with recycled water and reuse, Monica has 11 plants all over LA County. And there's plants in Saugus, there's plants in Inland Empire, there's plants everywhere. And so then we can reuse that water and deliver it more locally than trying to push seawater back into the system. And so for now, we have chosen to look at reuse before we get into desal, but desal still sits on our water resource portfolio in the future if needed.
Question over here.
I was wondering, what % of the houses in Southern California, or what % of their water that is used in the houses is used for creating recycled water?
So
That's free.
actually, all the water that you flush or goes down the drain when you shower, when you wash clothes, when you wash dishes, all of that goes to one of our water reclamation facilities. And all of that is recycled water. So all of that can eventually then go back into the system to be reused. And then Long Beach had the graphic about like in their city, how much water comes from each of the different sources. And so, yeah, all the water that you use at your house goes to our facilities and is recycled.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to add, that's a great question. So I want to add to that. And I think maybe you wanted to talk about total water usage at a household, right? And so then we talk about indoor use as well as outdoor use. And so the outdoor use, that water does not go into the sewer system because it's just use it to irrigate the lawns and maybe you're growing some vegetables. But that does not become recycled water, right? And so that aspect roughly then, I'd probably say 30% of your total water use is non-recyclable, and the rest is indoor water use, which then will go down the sewer and then can be recycled.
We have time for one more question.
What do you do with the germs in the water?
What do you do with the germs? How do you
So-
extract them? What happens to them?
So that comes out in different processes. So when you go to the treatment plant, there's like what I said, it's called tertiary treated water. So that means that there's 3 different processes that happen. And the germs are, in each of those different processes, and we slowly remove them as the water flows through the treatment process. And so it comes out as solids that gets taken away and treated separately. And then anything else that remains, the water gets filtered, and then also it's later disinfected with either chlorine or UV or some other kind of disinfection. And then the solids then go to a separate treatment facility where it's treated through additional processes, and the germs are, taken care of through those different digestion and different stuff like that. And then those solids actually then can later also be reused as compost for different facilities. So the germs themselves are mostly killed through disinfection, through heat, through different processes like that kill the germs.
There are no germs in Long Beach.
Well, thank you so much. Let's give our panelists another wonderful round of applause. I know that not many of you got to ask your questions, but the panelists will be available during the reception, so you can feel free to approach them and ask some of those questions that you didn't get answered here today. The reception is a choose your own adventure. You have 2 different options. You can stay here on this ground level where you came in. There is a cash bar, there are some craft tables, there's a paint of fish exhibit, or you can choose to go up the stairs, or we have an elevator you can use, and at the top floor you can see some live animals. You can see some frogs, more specifically, and some of our baby animals as well. We invite you to come back in December. On December 4th, we will be talking about polar bears. Hooray! So we have a researcher scientist, Dr. Karen Rose, who is part of USGS's Alaska Science Center, who will be sharing information about polar bears up in the Arctic. We hope that you had a really wonderful time tonight and that you do stick around for some of those conversations and crafts. So thank you so much for joining us, and online as well. Oh, I forgot one more thing. There's swag outside. You can learn more about your water system in this delightful magazine, and you can pick up some of the Color Yourself water system photo or images that Monica mentioned. So check out that table as well.